brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? 'Cause that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
Welcome, everyone, to this Suds segment. I'm one of your hosts, good old Gal Julieanna, and joining me today at the table is good old Boy Kendall.
Do you have the time to listen to me whine?
Don't worry, we'll edit that out.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, that was good. It's good.
Good old boy Dave.
I can't follow that. How am I supposed to follow that?
Ooh.
See, I silence Dave for once. Yeah. He's speechless.
Wait, we got to write this down.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the sand. No, I'm just kidding.
He crapped all over my intro. That's what he did. Kind of appropriate.
Cool. Well, recently we started a new series, and we call it Beer Club.
Beer Club.
Yeah, think of a book club, but with records and beer.
So it's really more of a record club, but they don't have those anymore.
Sure.
You know, where you could get 10 for $1.
10 for $1.
Wasn't that Columbia House? You get 10 for $1.
Sometimes it was like 13 for a penny.
Yeah, it was for a penny.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you paid a lot after.
Yeah, that's how they got you. Unless you got your mom to call them and tell them that you're only 12 and there's no way they're going to get their money. It's just
Man, I joined a bunch of those. I had a huge tape collection, cassette tapes.
Oh, no way. I didn't know they had cassette
yeah,
tapes.
they swapped over to cassette tapes.
Yeah.
When those got big, and
then they went to CDs, and the CDs was, I think that was $1.
Yeah, that might have been, but
okay.
Yeah, I remember it was a penny at first. You had to tape the penny to the card, put it in the mail.
And then, each whatever you wanted, you had to,
You had to, mark your
records
genres that you liked or whatever. And then they would just start sending you one every month until you said, no, stop, please.
Or whatever.
Or your mom called them.
Yeah, or your mom called. Yes. Okay, well, you want to...
Oh, sorry. So someone picks an album. Oh, I'm sorry. We're talking about Beer Club. Okay. So someone picks an album, then we all listen to it. Then we each pick a beer that pairs well with it. Now we'll all sit around, and each of us will share our beer and talk about why we think it pairs well with the album.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
Good old boy Kendall, since you picked the album, why don't you tell us about it?
Oh my gosh, this album was so revolutionary. I was a child of the 80s, so I grew up listening to a lot of 80s metal and 80s punk.
Sure.
And it was all good music, and then we hit the 90s, and things changed really fast. We got into the era of grunge.
Got dark,
really angsty, and I mean, I still love a lot of those bands, especially Nirvana's Nevermind. What an album.
Oh, yeah.
But everything was so, it was music to kill yourself to.
Yeah.
It was really sad and depressing.
Just wear flannel and cry a lot.
And then Green Day came out of nowhere with just this great pop punk sound. Mm-hmm. And it was so fun. They seemed just like a bunch of idiots who were just having a blast. I mean, there was some of that angst in there that you were getting, but it was so different than the rest of the flannel-wearing grunge out of, the Northwest. These guys from California were just having so much fun. They were a little bit crazy, a little bit nuts, and it's just a great album. I mean, the whole album is great, but there's 5 songs, and, their singles were just legendary. And when you listen to those songs, and they came on the radio, or even now I listen to one of the Sirius XM channels that plays a lot of the 90s alternative and grunge. They're so much fun, and when you realize they're all in the same record together, it kind of blows your mind. Because most bands put it on an album with maybe one great song and a couple mediocre ones.
Yeah.
Sure.
Their singles on this were huge, and sometimes it's a little going for the ratings, but they're really good, solid songs, and they really are the best songs on the album. I mean, there's some good ones on there, but those were so great. I think about, Longview, Basket Case, When I Come Around, She, which I don't know was officially a single, but it's really good. You still hear it a lot of time. And then, of course, Welcome to Paradise. Just so much fun. I think Basket Case is the most fun song out of there. It's just so great.
Yeah.
Got a great riff, great drive, and wow. And Dookie's still... I've got two favorite Green Day albums, but they're both very different. To me, 90s Green Day, Dookie is just the epitome of it.
Sure.
We get past 2001 when all the world, kind of started going crazy. And I think American Idiot is a fantastic album, but it's a whole different Green Day at that point.
Kind of showcases the longevity of their career, too.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just, I've always loved American Idiot. It's one of my favorites, especially as a concept album. But, I don't know if there was a concept to Dookie other than just having fun and being kind of nitwits.
Yeah, and they were pretty young at that time too, right?
21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 1994, Dookie, by their major label debut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Reprise Records.
Okay. Well, good old boy Dave, why don't you give us the Suds ratings for today, and then we'll be on our way.
All right, let's get into this Dookie. So we'll be discussing these and rating these beers while we talk about Dookie. With these Suds ratings plus our signature belching sounds, here are those ratings now. 1, that sucks. Give me anything but a bud. 2, was that a belch? 3, what a relief. 4, a body should really not make that sound. And 5, listen to that hang time, give me another.
Sounds good. Well, we can't play any clips from Dookie.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, but we encourage you to check it out for yourself. And vinyl is always the best option. But you can stream it online or any other way that you get your music.
Get your butt out to the record store. Buy you a copy.
Yep, and
Right.
it's a fast listen, too. You can listen to this whole album through. I forget what the runtime is, but it gets by quickly. Because some of these songs are just 2 or 3 minutes long.
39 and a half minutes, whole thing. Boom, you're done.
That's a short one.
Yeah.
So, on the technical side of this, the studio album by Green Day is called Dookie. It was released February 1st, 1994. It was recorded in September and October of 1993, which, in the scheme of things, was pretty quick. And it was recorded at Fantasy Studios in Berkeley, California. And 39 minutes and 34 seconds.
It's almost 30 years old.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
and it was produced by Rob Cavallo and Green Day. Okay, so, go to Boy Kendall. Let's get into it.
All
And
right.
what beer did you bring to go along with Dookie?
So I was thinking this is one of the greatest albums of the 90s and really made a name for Green Day in the 90s. So I went with a beer that also was kind of birthed in the 90s and grew legendary, and that is Rogue's Dead Guy Ale.
It's such a good beer, dude.
Yeah.
And, it plays along with the kind of somber, grungy thing with the skeleton, but he's also kind of fun. He's holding a beer. He's having a good time.
He's having a good
and
time.
I thought it just really pairs well with 90s
a
craft
happy
beer
dead guy.
with 90s beer.
Cool.
And also a beer that has stood the test of time. 30 years later, we're still drinking it.
Absolutely.
I know, and we're still listening to Dookie. Yeah.
Now, is there a particular which you said which one did you say was your favorite track on the album?
Probably Basket Case.
Basket Case. Okay.
But, all those singles were just fantastic.
Do you remember where you were when you heard the first song from them?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Well, if you remember the 90s, you probably weren't there.
I mean, it was probably just listening to the radio. Probably here. I just moved to Nashville the spring of '94, so probably just driving around listening to KDF back when they were rock before they turned country.
Yeah.
They played a lot of Green Day on KDF.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's probably where I first heard it.
103 KDF Nashville.
I still have my 103 KDF card. You remember they had the club?
Yeah.
And they had little cards you could go around and pick up free stuff around town.
Oh, really?
I had one of
The
bumper
rock.
stickers.
It's the rock card.
Oh.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
That's pretty progressive for Nashville, isn't it? From back then.
Well, give us some tasting notes on Dead Guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's what I think traditionally it's been called a Maibock, but
Yeah.
it's just a nice brown. I don't know if it is an ale or lager, but it's super malty, but it still finishes really dry. And there's this wonderful woodsy, earthy, herbal bitterness that just kind of balances out that little malt sweetness. You look at this thing and you think that's going to be a malt bomb, but it's really light the way they made this beer, and it's just got a lot of flavor, and it's a perfect beer for food.
It is. Yes.
You know, and we've talked about that many times on the show. So many of these brown beers with the malt content just holds up really well to big food.
Pretty much anything. Pizza, burgers,
Yep.
barbecue.
Especially
You name it.
cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah.
Goes so well with this.
And I imagine that they were eating a lot of cheeseburgers and interesting fast food, etc., on the road as they were touring with this record.
Young touring band.
Yeah, so
Well, they were eating some kind of spoiled food, whereas
Yeah.
that's where they got the name for the. They had some bouts of diarrhea.
Yes. Yes.
That's
yes,
where
they
the name
did.
came from.
And
Yeah.
here I thought they were just so excited to be going on stage.
Hate to be their laundry crew at that point in
But-
time. Jeez.
Yeah, right?
But I'm pretty sure we've talked about this beer more than once
This
over
has
the
been
years.
a best of on multiple occasions.
Oh,
yeah.
and I mean, and there's a reason why. Mm-hmm. And, for so long, it to be doing so well and still holds up in the lexicon of all that is available right now. Even with the fads, if you will, of New England IPAs and other, hoppy IPAs and the lactose beers and the sour beers and the sour lactose and the sour fruited stouts or whatever is
Think
going
about-
on.
yeah.
This
This
is
still
old
stands
school.
up. Right.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
I know.
looking at it. It says it's a Maibock-style ale. So whereas
Okay.
a Maibock's a lager,
Okay.
this is an ale brewed in a style. But it's really hard to tell the difference as clean as this beer
yeah.
finishes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, and what's great now is you can go just about anywhere and pick it up in these beautiful 19.2 ounce cans
That's the new big
Which is
thing,
the
man.
perfect size.
Yeah.
for sharing with friends
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
listening to Dookie.
There you go.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
Like out in a fire pit
Sure.
or anywhere, really.
Right. Right.
But it's so funny when I went in the store to buy this. I didn't necessarily have Dead Guy in mind, but I was like, what's a beer that screams 90s?
Yeah.
And when I saw this, it was like there was no other option.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer.
It's weird that this is a gas station beer now. Like I see
Right?
it like at almost all gas stations.
and it's
So-
a brand that really people know, still
Yeah.
gets their attention.
Well, and the iconic little Dead Guy on there. Even if you don't recognize Rogue, you recognize that dude. So
Yeah, and he is
Very cool.
prominently featured on a can. In fact, if
Yeah.
you're looking at the front of the can, that's all you see.
yeah,
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
you need.
and
Is the
honestly,
dead
you
guy.
don't need to.
yeah.
You
That's
don't
all
need to know anything
little,
else.
Little fella there.
Yeah, exactly. But such a classic.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to rate the Dead Guy from Rogue. That pairs so well with Dookie, a 5.
Sorry, Rogue.
I meant the record. We'll be back in just a minute with more.
But baby, the whole elation riding down this lover's avenue. As slow as the willow blows, or as fast as the whirlwind grows, we glide beneath the stars in cobalt blue. Look to the left, to the right. Keep your eyes on the road, my darling, wondering if we're only passing through. Open roads and open windows, my hand is yours forever, sweet love. Our eyes ahead on these back roads with a view.
Welcome back, everyone, to another fine edition of Beer Club. And today's Beer Club is focusing on the record Dookie by Green Day that was released in February of 1994. This was Kendall's pick, and we just finished discussing the beer that he brought with Dookie. So now let's go to good old boy Dave. What beer did you bring to go with Dookie?
Well, when I think of Dookie, the album or the byproduct, only one beer truly comes to mind, and that is the Brown Note from Against the Grain.
It's a great choice.
It's a 5.8% American brown ale. Against the Grain Brewery is out of Louisville, Kentucky. Been loving what these guys do for a long time. And although the can art might throw some people off, the beer that's inside it is actually a really outstanding beer. And I you know, on the surface, I picked this because of the name, the Brown Note, and it looks like a guy crapped his underwear on the can.
And honestly, the can art would fit well on the Dookie album cover.
Yeah.
It totally would.
I
Right.
think the guys would appreciate
Yeah.
this
You know,
so much.
originally they were going to call it Liquid Dookie in honor of their diarrhea problem, but the label was like, no, you can't call it Liquid Dookie. So they had to remove the word liquid. But honestly, too, though, I think this is another beer, you know, Against the Grain has always been a brew that had like a little bit of an attitude. They kind of did their own thing, went their own way. And so I think this also makes it pair well with this record. And like my favorite song, I want to say is probably When I Come Around, because I just remember driving, whenever you were driving in the car and that song came on, turn the radio up, put the windows down, like even if it was winter, and like everybody would just be singing like idiots. And I think that's just a really good memory from me. It's a blurry, fuzzy memory, but as most of my 90s memories are. But yeah, I think that's what I like about the album, and because there are a lot of good memories with it, and it's still a good album to listen to. Kind of like we were saying, like a ton of the music we still listen to comes from that era.
Yeah,
that's when we were really coming up, and that's when a lot of the music that really impacted our lives was made. You know, but I like this beer a lot. I think it has the nice right amount of hoppiness, matches well with a little bit of roast, good body, good finish. So yeah, I'm a fan of this beer.
I like it, and there's notes reminiscent of the dead guy in here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit there, yeah.
A little bit of that toffee, malty, but it's definitely a little more bitter, and it's more. I would say they're probably using a little bit newer style hops.
I mean, which is fine because it's a newer beer in comparison.
Yeah, this beer is what, 15 years old
Yeah.
at most.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
You know, so that makes sense. But the tongue-in-cheekness of Against the Grain, like, to me, goes, like, I would say if you were to say that, like, if you were to compare Against the Grain to a band, I think it would be something that was in that punky 90s genre.
Irreverence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, the malt on this is nice, and it's not too heavy. It's
a really light body on this thing, but it's
very much.
But it's kind of what you want it to be, and it lets all the flavors just sort of float out there and ride along. And I like the bitterness on it because it lingers just enough on the finish to make you kind of want to come in for another sip.
Yeah. I mean, and it kind of reminds me, you know, of the band, how they could be a little full of themselves a little bit and, you know, kind of give you that little sucker punch. But,
yeah, man, that dude, he did a number on his drawers on this can. So if you've never seen the can for the Brown Note, go look it up.
yeah.
Yeah, I know retail establishments that will not carry this beer
Really?
because of the can art.
Well,
wow.
They're jerks.
That's crazy.
It's a great brown.
Yeah. Well, there's that. So, if we were to rate the Brown Note from Against the Grain, we would rate that a 4. Yeah.
Nice. Good job, Against the Grain.
Yeah, and
Keep
Good
crapping your
job.
pants.
Good job, good old boy Dave, for thinking similarly to good old boy Kendall.
I have not matured since 1994. Probably 74, but
Oh,
yes.
I got thoughts.
I still love a good poop joke.
And who doesn't? Okay, well, for me, I was intrigued by your pick of this record because it does kind of represent a lot. I'm gonna be honest and say, like, Green Day isn't exactly my biggest band ever, like,
It's not prog rock, okay? Let's just say it's not prog rock, okay?
No, but for what it was when it came out, I do remember, like, the first time I heard Basket Case, and I was like, who is this band? What is this? Because, again, for all the stuff that was going on, it was different.
Mm-hmm.
And
so different.
And by this point, I was, like, knee-deep into grunge and, like, Mudhoney and Screaming Trees, as well as the Pearls and the Soundgardens, et cetera, et cetera. All of the, like, that sub-pop thing just was my jam. So this was completely different. And I was like, well, where do these guys come from? And then they're like, oh, it's this whole California thing going on. And I'm like, California? Really? Like, what's up with that?
This was what all the grunge kids listened to by themselves because they didn't want people to know they were in a good mood.
Yeah. I mean, and truly, when you think pop punk, I don't think anybody does it better than Green Day.
No. And that was a genre that I had to wrap around my head a little because I'm like, wait, how could you be poppy and be punky?
Yeah, they pulled it off.
No, they did. Completely. But what was interesting about the record is a lot of people thought that it was a sellout because they
a lot of the original fans hated them after this.
Right.
You went to a major label, you don't care about punk.
Okay, so despite the fact that Green Day kind of said, no, we want everyone to know what this whole genre is like, and props to them for doing, like, I think they did it with the best of intentions compared to what some of their fans may or may not say. You know what I mean? I picked a beer that I feel anyways, when you are starting out as a brewery, I don't know that you necessarily would start out with a style like this, knowing that hops are a thing and malty beers are a thing. So what I brought to the table today, which is, again, completely different than everybody else, is from Southern Grist, which is in our backyard in Nashville, Tennessee. And it's in their Hill series. So their Hill series was one of the first beers when they came onto the scene. It was on their first day of release, along with IPAs and traditional beers that you would expect.
The mixed greens.
Yeah, that you would expect a new brewery to have. This just happens to be one of the latest iterations, which is just a representative of the whole Hill series. But it's called 100K Hill, and it is a sour ale that's brewed with lactose, passion fruit puree, and blackberry puree, and it's only 5.6% ABV. The reason why I picked this style, if you will, was because I felt when Southern Grist came onto the scene that they kind of like sold out to the trendy stuff so quickly with this Hill series, but yet it's endured. And they kind of said, well, you know what? It's trendy. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it well, and like it's going to be a part of our life no matter what. Which is, I mean, to this day, it's a thing. So I wanted to compare that to Dookie.
And I love how they changed, because I just listened to a great podcast. I forget which beer magazines did it, with Southern Grist at their anniversary when they were in town for CBC.
Oh, nice.
They interviewed them, and they were talking about that. It's like we never like drinking the same beer twice, so we decided to be a brewery that doesn't really brew the same beer twice.
Sure.
And, you know, a few years in, that there's some that they keep around to keep brewing, but they're probably the most experimental brewery in town. always trying something new and always redefining what its style is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which, I mean, in a way you could say that Green Day kind of did that, too, because they helped push that genre of taking punk, traditional punk, and adding like a light pop tartiness to it to make it more mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Which, honestly, people would say, punk, mainstream? What the heck is going on here?
Well, and honestly, like if you're a band, like you want to write great songs, and you want, maybe you don't necessarily care that everybody likes them, but you want to push your best work out there. And in some bands, when they do that, they get a small following, and then when some bands do it, they hit big on one or two songs, and then some bands, small minority, they hit big and like they consistently go. And I feel like that's what a brewery wants to do with their beers. They want to put their best beers out there. And if some people are like, oh, you're just following trends, or you're just doing the next latest thing or whatever, well, sometimes that's what you have to do when you're a business. But if you're doing it well and you're consistently out there pushing the boundaries,
doesn't even matter.
People got to respect that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I picked this beer, or this style of beer, I should say. In terms of Dookie, there's a couple of songs that I think would be like my favorites. I mean, Basket Case is one. You mentioned She before. That's a really good. I mean, you still hear
catchy,
that a lot today, But also when I Come Around, you hear that a lot. And I think and the album cover more than anything is what really drew me in, because there's a lot of stuff going on that record, and it's one of those things where I used to be a big fan of Richard Scarry as a kid, and that's where like there were cats, there were mice, there were various things, but it was one of those things that it was one of those books that like you would search out for the little lowly worm or whatever. The Dookie record made me like search out and look for different things. And I mean, there was Patti Smith in there. There was Angus Young from AC/DC in there. There was somebody that looked like the Mona Lisa.
Oh, the chick from the first Black Sabbath album.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
dogs having sex. I mean, just,
I use Apple Music for most of what I listen to. If you pull up the album on Apple Music, it's actually animated. There's stuff moving around.
Oh,
Really?
cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh,
cool.
That's neat. But it's, it was cool. It wasn't just a picture. If you looked more, you got
There's so
different
much there.
references, and different meanings. Anyways, so there's that. So what do you guys think of
The beer?
the 100K Hill?
It's tart. It's fruity.
It
There's
is.
a lot. It's thick. Got a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah, this is a great beer. So much passion fruit. It's just
It is, right?
on the
This guy
aroma.
loves the passion
I do love
fruit,
passion
man.
fruit.
But it's pure. Like, it's a good, pure passion fruit. It's not artificial.
Yeah.
And I think for what they did, I think it was done well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
good beer.
So what shall we rate? Yeah. Okay. The Southern Grist 100K Hill. We are going to rate a 4. And that is going to do it for today's episode. I think this was a great pairing and a great discussion.
It was fun.
These beers all went really well with Dookie.
Yeah,
So-
and I've listened to this album a couple times just getting ready for this. So
Yeah.
I would encourage you, go give it a listen.
Yeah.
Great album, almost 30 years later.
Yeah, it is.
Get in that Dookie.
Well, good old Boy Kendall, thanks for the recommendation and thanks for being here today.
It's been a pleasure.
Please tell us about your blog.
My wife and I blog about the good news of good beer at beermakes3.com, and follow us at bm3.beer as we travel to every brewery in the state of Tennessee in 2023.
Nice.
How cool is that? Good old boy Dave.
Thanks. Bye.
This is good old Gal Juliana. Keep on shuggling and catch you next time.
Awesome.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're listening to us online, do yourself a favor and tap
Tap it in.
the subscribe button.
Give it a little tappy. Tap, tap, tap-a-roo.
The easiest way to listen to our show is to ask Siri, Alexa, Google, Uncle Larry, or whoever it is that talks to you on your phone. Play podcast Sip, Suds, and Smokes. We love your feedback, and you can reach us at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our tasting notes flow out on Twitter and Instagram with our handle @sipsudsandsmokes, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. You'll also be able to interact with the thousands,
Millions and millions
of other fans on those social media platforms. Do us a favor. Take the time to rate this episode if you're listening to us online. That's a big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. Come back, join us for another episode, and keep on sipping.
This has been a one-tan hand production of Sip, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see you all next time.